starting with a few thank yous. Thank you to Nigel Clark and the Playing Field Committee for letting us use the field, and to Nigel for being here well before I was somewhat late this afternoon, I'm sorry, and putting out all the chairs. To Duncan McLennan, who has supplied the kit for us this afternoon, as he did for the last session, and most especially for so many of you coming. The plan was that we would have a lot more people here this time than we were able to manage. It did require you to bring your own seats and see a whole eclectic range of seats looking around. But thank you very much for coming, and you're obviously here because you're interested and possibly concerned about the fact that there is not just one development, one that we heard about on just adjacent to the Mead. I heard about that 5 weeks ago for some 29 houses, but there's also a further development on in the pipeline. And it's not a choice of either one or the other. It's not as though one side of the village has to say, well, ours is a better proposition than that proposition. The reality is that there's every likelihood, much as we may not like it, that both plans will go forward. So that's not saying that the parish council is necessarily going to agree to either of the plans, but it's just facing the reality that Mendip now finds itself without a housing supply, 5-year housing land supply, which means that not the local Mendip plan is determining planning applications, but something called the National Planning Policy Framework, which many councillors will tell you normally leans towards encouraging development. And of course our own Prime Minister has, as a major strategy for trying to get us out of the awful recession that COVID has plunged us into, he came out with he likes these sorts of strap lines, build, build, build. And clearly we're going to see a lot more building in the country. And many of us will have sons and daughters who will be telling you that they need help or they're not going to be able to buy a house anywhere. That doesn't mean that they all have to be built in road, even if it feels a bit like they all are going to be built in road. So today we've got the plans which you've now got in your hand. We actually never did see the plans from the Mead, but you've now, I think all of you have got plans of the proposed development at Barbara's-Field, and with the plans also for Brownsground. And so I'm now going to hand over to Andy Fussell when he comes out. Here he is. He needs no introduction from me, so I'm not going to give him an introduction. Andy Fussell.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'll try and keep it as less windy as possible so you can hear me. Okay, so I've managed to give as many or all of the plans out. And just as everybody has a look at them, because you'll want to look at them as I go through stuff. Could you just make sure you are orientated and understand which way round the map is, if that's possible? Yeah, I know it might be, everybody should know where north is, okay? And so this site, as Barbara's site, has been in or was originally put into the neighbourhood plan when that was drawn up or was starting to be put together by the parish council way back. It has been under option with various people for the last 30 years. Okay, so it's not a new site. Brownsground is probably what you might be familiar with it, of the overall scheme being called. And I was told years ago by various developers that Brownsgown, being an elevated situation, would probably never be applicable to having houses. Now, there was, and I've got, but did Simon get introduced? Did you get introduced? Okay, so I've done an option right from Charles Church, Beza Homes, Westbury Homes, all sorts of people over the years, and all of them have had basically the same idea and concept as what you've got on the map in front of you. It's been tweaked around and different things have happened. But Simon Steele Perkins on my right here is from a company called Strategic Land Partnerships, and I met Simon nearly 14 years ago, and he helped me do Church Farm and move Church Farm to Parkgate Lane and do the development up there. So he is the planning side of the landowner. Okay. And any questions that I can't answer, then hopefully Simon can answer if there are any technical stuff. So going back to this development, the crux of it is basically it is Barbara's Field, which is down the right-hand side of your map. Known as Barbara's because it was. It is behind my aunt's house at Clayfield, so it's my auntie Barbara lived there, so it's called Barbara's. And Brown's Ground obviously is the big ground on the left of there. I have never really said that we would be planning any houses on Brown's Ground. It is all about tucking houses away inside Barbara's. It's hidden almost. It's not hidden from the people that live down Bradford Road, obviously, but it is hidden from most of the village. So it's not it doesn't create a high aspect to be looked in on. The amount of houses you can see is all listed on the plans in front of you. These are a indicative proposal plan. So obviously it's not gone into an application as yet because this is a consultation. But this is hopefully what we would like it to look like. It gives basically in perpetuity all of Brown's Ground on an outline basis to the parish council. Apart from the frontage, you can see there are houses on the frontage. It's obviously a bus route. It's the natural artery in and out of the village. And so houses on the frontage, we thought that would be suitable. The main part of Brown's Ground, as you can see, is to be left completely free. We have 12 allotments up in the top left-hand corner, an orchard stroke tree setup, tree plantation, and then a pond in the middle, which is a natural pond anyway. It's pretty much been there since time began. And a footpath to be designated through the parish council all the way round the outside of the ground, through the woodland, and then down to an exit next to this house on the left, and down to where it comes out, as it does at the moment, dead straight down from John Osborne's, right the way down to the bottom where it comes out by Brothers. There are 49 houses in total, of which 15 are age restricted. The age restricted bit is down on the bottom right hand corner. They are bungalows. We think that will be, or the plan is that will be age restricted is 55 plus. I'm 44, I don't consider myself to be particularly old yet. However, within the neighbourhood plan and within the Mendip plan, there's a need in the village for age-restricted houses. So that was identified. So that is the little bit on the right-hand side down there. There's 15 of them. They would be, Simon, this would be a different type of house to the proper residential, which will be at the top, only in that it is probably a different developer. So what you have is a company who actually has a scheme for that type of housing. So it's not a care facility. Anybody who can remember the neighbourhood plan, when I first presented it, we had put a care home in here, okay? It was designated subsequently after that it wasn't, a care home was not necessary and not needed. It was in there as well because obviously it creates employment, and I thought that would be a really good idea. But it was frowned upon, and so basically at the time I said, well, it doesn't have to be that. So we ended up putting in now a age-restricted sheltered accommodation. There's a company we've been looking at who provide exactly that type of housing, bungalows, and you can buy it outright. So it is freehold, but it's not a facility of care. Okay, you can ask me more questions on that later. The top part on the right hand side is all residential, 2s, 3s, 4s. Autograph have found with the site at Church Farm that actually 5 bedrooms, they don't really sell very well. So their houses are able to be put back to 4 bedrooms and still use the same floor area. So, but it's a mixed housing at the top, and then these along the bottom will also fit into that realm. 30% affordable is standard, and what I didn't realise, but Simon has enlightened me, and some other people that I've talked to, 30% affordable housing also is applicable to the age restricted. Okay, so it's 30% is for the whole site basically. Again, the Browns ground side of it. So I would like our idea was to put into the scheme the fact that the Browns ground would then be in perpetuity given to the parish council. It then safeguards the rest of Browns ground from being built on in the future. It also safeguards all the amenities that are there for the dog walkers, and creating a green open space in the middle of the village, because at present we don't actually have one in the middle of the village. We have a tiny little green, which is lovely, but there is a potential there for a very large village, or middle to the village, staying as it is. You know, it's got maize in it at the moment, so we're still farming it. But that would go in on a 106 agreement. I don't want to get too complicated, but there is an agreement which we have to enter into. The developer has to enter into, I should say. Do we have to enter that? We do as well. Yeah, we do. So we do as well with the developer, so that when they come in, they have to follow the 106 agreement. That's right. So if we put that in, it stays in. We did the same, did we not, with bungalows up at Church Farm? And Simon and I met in a very stuffy meeting room with Mendip, and actually we had to fight, if I remember rightly, to get them to take bungalows. So we do have an influence within a 106 agreement to get any feedback that you give us that is applicable, shall I say, can be taken with us and put in and try and get into the 106. Yeah, I can go anywhere you want. It means that lot can't see me. That's better. So yeah, we can. No, I can't hear myself now. Can you hear me now? Yeah. So yeah, we can do things like that. This, again, if you look, it is an indicative proposal. Okay, so we would be going for outline planning and not a full planning permission with regards to the criteria of the houses. So not design, not layout. The layout you see in there is an indicative layout. At a 106 and a reserve matters level, that can be changed, okay? And Simon and I will certainly listen. I already know that, well, I don't know if Paul Westbury is here, but Paul Westbury's garden that is at the top there is not actually drawn on this map. So there are things that Simon and I within the 106 can influence when it comes to the actual layout of these houses, okay? Yep, I think that's probably as much as if you need to ask me. Have you got anything to ask? No, not a moment. So if you've got a question, and it doesn't matter whatever question, then if we have one at a time, and then maybe I need to listen to it, and then I'll just see if I can answer it. How's that?
Could we have people from the village rather than representatives of the council, please? Is that possible?
Yeah, you can talk, right?
No, there's lots of people here.
Yeah.
I like the sound of my own voice, I know, but there's loads of people here from that caravan.
Yeah.
I much prefer not to hear you, Linda.
I was just going to ask you to do the contact session where we have
Oh, I don't know about that. We want to hear the feeling of the people.
which is really important.
I'm sure it is.
Yes, Andrew.
Are we talking through the chair here? Is that the plan?
We can do if you prefer
I'd like to ask a procedural question. Are we limited to questions only, or can we make our own representation?
I think this is an information session. There can and probably will be further meetings to discuss both of the planning applications. So I think at the moment we're looking for questions rather than for statements.
Well, I'd like to challenge that, because I think there's things that should be said at this stage that people need to hear as well. If you're going to have a meeting, it should be a two-way exchange of information.
Okay. Okay.
Perhaps my suggestion would be we had clarification questions first, to ask questions about what you said, Andy. And then we perhaps invite a number of people to say what they have to say as well, along the lines of what Paddy was suggesting. That would be my proposal for how you might.
Well, it's everybody's meeting, Andy.
I can't hear you, mate.
It's everybody's meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, if that's the way people would like to do it, with 50 people here, let's use that time as effectively as possible. So let's start with any questions where people are looking for clarification on what's being proposed.
Access to the houses that are on Church Lane.
The one bit I didn't talk about. Okay, access. If you haven't got a map either. Here.
You can have mine.
Okay, right. Access into the site would come up Church Lane. So from the entrance off of the 361 by the bell, and it would be straight up. It's about 160 metres to the entrance into the site. I haven't got anymore. So it comes in. There is one. That's a very good point, because when we looked at getting into the site getting in and out of the site is quite easy. Highways don't seem to have too much of an issue with that at all at the moment. It's open. It's already a bus route, and it's a straight piece of road. There's no bends, there's no lanes. It's all tarmac, etc. So it's quite open. Clay Lane. If you look on your indicative map, Clay Lane, it seemed to us if the development was built, then Clay Lane may become a rat run, because everybody could technically turn left and then exit on to the Bradford Road. It's only indicative, but in there we thought that we ought to probably stop that. We could use it as a cycleway and a walkway for pedestrians, and it would allow the residents at the end of Clay Lane, as in sportsman's end to be able to come in and out at will rather than having to go all the way around to get to their properties. So actually, it would actually do away with the one-way system, and so people would be able to walk and cycle out, but not drive. It's only indicative, it's just an idea that it would stop that being a rat run and a queue ending up as well on the Bradford Road. That was just but all the access if it was for building materials, etc., would come not through the centre of the village. It would all come straight from the main road and into the site. Yes, Richard.
Yeah. At a parish council meeting on Zoom, it was kind of discussed, and John Osborne owns some of the land which was going to be, which was apparently a showstopper. Has that issue been resolved, or? Yeah.
I'm really affected by hearing it.
Yeah, no problem. Mine too. So there was an issue with access as part of this across land by John Osborne. Has that been resolved?
We approached John years and years ago about using an original idea. Mm-hmm. Can everybody hear me?
No.
No.
Question actually.
Okay, Richard, I can't see you, but I am talking to you. Okay. There was an idea originally of going out via. Okay, repeat the question. Richard asked, was there an access problem with regarding the use of John Osborne's land at the very top right-hand corner of the site? It was a long time ago thought that we could take the entrance and the access into the site through the top of the site, and then that would then come on to the top of Road Hill. But that was obviously it's a very bad junction. It might have been possible at the time probably to sort that junction out. That could have been an issue, a big one, I suppose. But that was dispelled years ago. So we've now come in the bottom end of the site, Richard. Can you see me? Yeah. And use the bottom end, so it has perfectly good access with regards to coming out onto Church. Okay, can you, it's like talking through a wall here. If you have a look at the map.
Andy, what was the question?
Yeah.
What was the question?
It's a good idea. The question that I was asked there was, have you taken into any consideration about the proximity of the residents of Bradford Road to where these houses are? If you look on the map, yes, we have tried to do that. What we've done is we've put an area in all the way round behind people's gardens. Now, again, please, this is an indicative idea, but we came up with giving a buffer zone between the gardens of the potential houses and the gardens of the residents of Bradford Road. Now on the front of this looks quite a good idea. And it probably would work to a degree, but subsequently to having this done, I've had various, not meetings, but conversations with people that have owned houses like Bradford Road residents that have had new builds with this buffer zone. And what they've ended up with is this sort of no man's land. And who looks after the no man's land? What happens when the brambles and everything grows up? And then, as I was pointed out by Paul Westbury at the top of Bradford Road, it's what happens when rubbish accumulates. Not that it might be rubbish, but who would go and sort that out? So we have tried to do something there for those houses. And again, because this is only an indicative map, there is every chance for Simon and I, when it comes to the actual layout, to work with, because we're quite happy to work with the residents of Bradford Road who will be affected by the proximity of the houses, because we have to, there's another phrase that you'll be probably familiar with, and it's called efficient use of space. Okay, and Mendip are very hot on their efficient use of space. So as much as 49 houses in what is approximately 7 acres of development, potential development land, in their eyes, they could probably put more in. If we put 44 went on 3¼ acres. So there's every possibility that we have to live very much in the vein of trying to figure out a way of fitting these houses in that fit within the effective land use. But again, that gives us a bit of scope to sort out and give gaps and areas away from houses on Bradford Road. Does that answer the question? Does that answer the question? Is that? Yeah. Did everybody hear that question? Okay. Drainage. As you can see on the bottom, there are two attenuation ponds. Okay. Now, Richard. Richard, hang on. I have to put. There's an attenuation pond is going into Church Farm, and what I had to do with my 9-acre site at Church Farm, with all those roofs and all that concrete, which is totally concrete, totally roofs, goes into one pond, and that doesn't overflow. Yeah, Rich.
Can you alternate the water somewhere else? Split the development, send the water one way, send the water the other way. We don't want it all coming down Clay Lane. Down my farm.
You wouldn't get it all coming your way, Richard. What I'm trying to demonstrate is, okay, I have 9 acres at Church. I have 9 acres of concrete up there, and I've built a lake up there, which, and all I can say is you need to come and see how my attenuation pond works. It doesn't overflow. It takes all of that. The other day, took all of that water, and it dissipates. It goes through this. It goes through the ground.
So you're saying, Andy, then you put the ponds in, it never overflow. In Clay Lane, you have no more water along Clay Lane.
I think it will sort out the drainage. Because I've obviously been Barbara's field, I've played that field 100 times, and your corner is the worst corner that I've got on the whole farm with wet, and there is a massive ditch there, and it stays pretty much. It goes away, but it's a big problem in that corner.
Before, the water used to go titty side.
Yeah, no.
Down, so you've done the ditch, the other side. Now, charging water now comes down behind Barbara's gate.
it will be an improvement when my brother's house flooded. Do you remember that? If there had been attenuation ponds in there then, yeah, that would have sorted that out. So I think what will happen is I actually think, right, now we've just put the pits in, the trial pits, to see the amount of water that goes away. Put 6 in there on Monday. Okay, so the results for that drainage will be out.
You've
But
got
it's,
pits into ponds in there, have you? Like pits, have you? Along the edge of Clay Lane.
I can't hear you.
Where have you got pits into?
Yeah.
Could I just perhaps help a little bit? With any planning application for any development, we would have to submit a flood risk assessment, and that's a very complicated technical document which will be forensically analysed, not just by all of you, but by the local authority, by the Environment Agency and the local flood authority. So, and what that does is it assesses the amount of water which currently lands out the sky onto the field and calculates that amount of water and ensures that once we've built houses on it, assuming that happens, that same amount of water is managed and controlled in a controlled way. At the moment, it's not controlled. It lands on the field and it runs off towards your house, towards down Clay Lane. What we can do, and the way to look at this is an opportunity, and what we've done is oversized those ponds, so actually they can control and contain more water than is currently contained within the site. So we can hold water back and discharge it at a controlled rate through the drainage channels, which ultimately come down this way, don't they? Ultimately discharge into the drainage system, the stormwater drain which runs down here. The same way it discharges. It'll come across there, yeah.
And stormwater. And stormwater comes down the actual storm drains in the road, Richard.
So wherever there's a problem off-site at the moment, and it sounds like there is at Clay Lane and there is adjacent to your house, then all of that water can be controlled, brought into the attenuation system, and then discharged at a controlled rate. And it's called the Greenfield runoff rate. And what that means is that no water will leave the site at any rate which is faster than it does at the moment. What we can do actually is slow it down, so it reduces the amount. So I hope that helps a bit. I didn't hear that.
Underground springs.
Are there springs at the top of the field?
They're very likely is, but I've farmed it for 40 years and I've not found a spring as such. But again, yeah, but it's perfectly possible to. There's a pond. There's a natural pond in Brown's Ground anyway, so that is where most. No, there's no natural pond in Barbara's Field. In where?
Can I have
No, I've been ploughing Barbara's Field. I've been ploughing Barbara's Field for 40 years. There's no pond in Barbara.
You were very young when you started plowing Barbara's Field, Andy. What did you say?
15.
It was now?
15. I'm 54. I've got 40 years I've been ploughing that.
Peter?
Yeah. Let's have another question.
Can I say something on this? I've been living in Clay Lane House since '87, and I am aware that Alison's track, which is part of Barbara's property, there used to be a pond full of water where the track is now. And Richard knows it because often as it used to have to come down and open up the pipe to allow the water to run where the pond used to be. That's where the pond used to be to capture the water from Barbara's Field.
Pretty much, but what Simon is saying, Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Yeah, what we're saying is, all the water that comes from that field right, all the water, we have to do a flood risk assessment. Okay, so within the flood risk assessment, it is a process that we have to go through. We did one for Church Farm. We did one for that church farm. You have to. I've got a planning application for a new lake. I've even got to do the flood risk assessment to make sure that 100-year anomaly will be catered for. So what Simon is saying is absolutely right. It has to go through. It has to meet the criteria. So if it says that those ponds have to be X, they have to be X, and they will not get signed off unless they are X wide, X deep, and the flow from that place or from those lakes can discharge into an application that will accept it and be able to cope with it. That has to be monitored. So,
can we move on? Can we take Andy Pickett next, and then I think it's only right that we should listen to our elected county councillor. She's got a point to raise. She's served us very well over many, many years. I think was somewhat rudely slapped down. Well, we've had a lot of villagers raising questions. We've got plenty of time for more questions, but then after Andy Pickett, we'll have Linda, and I think Steve Isles would like to raise a question after that.
I have two questions, if I may. Firstly, what would be the datum, height of the land on which the development of the houses in Barbara's Field will start from? Because if it's the current ground level without any excavation, your acknowledgement that Brown's ground is too high to be developed applies to the vast majority of Barbara's Field as well. The hedge is more or less the high point of that entire space. So is there a proposal to reduce the level of the ground that is being developed in Barbara's Field somewhere close to the datum point that is Bradford Road at the moment? If not, you're going to have a very high development overlooking Bradford Road. The second question I have is just pure clarity. Is the 49 houses the quantity of houses on the entire development? It's not clear to me, even by counting them. It's not clear what is a property and what is multiple properties. Is it 49, including all the houses in Brown's ground and on the frontage, or is it 49 as the plan shows in Barbara's Field only?
No, I think, Andy, it's perfectly self-explanatory. It's 49 in total, 4 along the frontage, and it's 15, so the difference is at the top. 49 in total.
And what about the dates with the land?
Simon will do that.
There's no intention to dramatically change the levels on any of the site. Inevitably, as one develops the site, as you can see up there, there's some groundworks required to adjust levels but on a relatively small basis. So to pick up your point, the reason Brown's ground has been identified as the area which we are considering offering the parish council is not so much our idea. That is identified in the neighbourhood plan. So that's where that's come from as an area of as a community asset, which the community's identified Brown's ground, not Barbara's Field.
No, but Andy acknowledged at the beginning that Brown's ground has always been held as undevelopable because of its height. That was a statement that Andy made.
Well, it's not just its height.
My point is, Barbara's Field, the majority of Barbara's Field, and particularly the houses that adjoin Brown's ground on this plan, will be built on land that, for all intents and purposes, is the same height as the highest point of Brown's ground. Maybe not exactly, but within the same ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, I think you might be right. I haven't got the topographical survey in front of me, but as well as providing a flood risk assessment, we'll also have to produce a landscape and visibility impact assessment. And what that does is it looks at the proposed development from all of the key viewpoints, all the way around the village, from wherever you can see it. and with photographs, with photo montages, and it will identify the sensitivities, the sensitive points, and we'll have to mitigate that, and we might have to adjust the plan. That work hasn't been done yet, and that will be done. It will be done to support a planning application, and it will also be, along with all of the other technical documents, be interrogated not just by you, but by the local authority and by their own experts. Linda?
Thank you. There's a lot of residents who are not here today, and I've invited to attend this meeting as was
Sorry,
Barbie.
use the mic.
Yeah.
I really can't hear you.
Peter, I've got a question.
I didn't expect to be up here, but all I was saying is there's a lot of residents that are not here today because they can't make a 4 o'clock appointment. So I'm here representing them, and I wanted to ask a perfectly reasonable question about transport and a transport assessment. Now, certainly Simon will be able to confirm, and probably Andy. Normally, with outline planning applications, there's very little documentation that has to be submitted, just the basic detail. The rest comes with with the reserved matters. Could we have confirmation today exactly which reports will be included in this application so people can judge them on their merits, can see the outcomes from discussions around these? And particularly because in the case of Murfield, where, like this application, it would appear that traffic and concerns about traffic is an issue, will at least there be a transport assessment that goes with this outline application? At least it can be tested against the same criteria that Murfield have been tested against.
Yeah, thank you. I can confirm there'll be a full suite of technical reports that would accompany even an outline application, and that would include a transport statement, and that looks at not just the traffic that's generated by the development and the impact that has on the local network, but it also, of course, looks at public transport and accessibility to services and facilities. So yes, that would be submitted with the application, as would, as I've mentioned, the landscape and visibility impact assessment, as would the flood risk assessment, as would a heritage assessment. We have to look at the impact on listed buildings, on assets of any kind of heritage importance. What else we got? An ecological impact assessment. And off the top of my head, that's about it. Trees, we're doing our arboricultural assessment, which looks at obviously if there are any trees to be lost, but also importantly looks at how we best protect the trees that are there already, because obviously we don't want to take trees down we don't have to. So yeah, there'll be a full suite of technical supporting documents, all of which get published on the council's website, and all of which are open to view by anybody.
I think Linda was specifically asking, when you're putting out planning application, will there be a transport?
Yes.
There will be.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions? Anybody like to raise any? Yes. Gentleman here. Yeah.
I'd just like to ask about the foul water coming off the site, because Bradford Road and my house at Taylor House has a main sewer running through our properties, and there's been storms in the past. It shouldn't really get storm water going into the main sewer. It's not going off now, but it does happen, and the water comes up back through the manhole when we get the storms we've had the last couple of weeks. And with these extra 49 houses, can you tell me where the foul water is expected to come to meet up with the main sewer?
Yeah, so the question was about foul drainage and where the connection would be. There's a foul sewer which runs down the eastern side of the site, which perhaps is the one you're talking about, and the connection would be into that foul sewer. The flood risk assessment looks at stormwater, but it also looks at foul drainage, and so that will look at the capacity of that sewer and any requirement for attenuation on site, which is sometimes done. ultimately, nowadays, the responsibility for off-site capacity is with the statutory undertaker, with the sewage utility company, and so they have to, if there are upgrades required, then they'll be working on that. That's their obligation. We have to pay for connection fees and all the rest of it, and that funds the work that's, if any, is needed. I don't know, to be honest. We haven't done that. That flood risk assessment hasn't been completed yet. If there's works that need to be done, then that will identify it.
Because it does have to be done on a yearly basis at the moment, because of the risk of coming up back to the manhole. So once it's coming next week, we'll do the main sewer manhole to check that it's free flowing from upstream past my property. So I'm very concerned about 49 houses going to be going in extra.
Yeah,
into the
I can understand that, and
It's not-
yeah, no, well, we that's something we can take away, and we can make sure that is addressed and transparent in the documentation when it's submitted.
doesn't affect our insurance. If it floods, we have to we're known as a floodplain, and we have to pay more for our insurance and to devalue our property as well. It's a big ask to make sure.
Yeah. No, good point. Well,
That's a really valid point.
Simon, when would you expect the application to be going in? Planning application?
So the question was, when would a planning application be submitted? We are well advanced with that. I don't have a target date. We're working. We obviously want to work with the parish council, with the local community. This is the first step towards that. As Andy has said, we've been working on this for 15 years. So, as you'll understand, the whole planning process is a cyclical one. There's a review of the local plan every 5 years. The neighbourhood plan is now nearly 5 years old. So that the whole process gets reviewed every 5 years. Planning applications can be made at any time, but I'm not trying to dodge the question. I don't know, but I would expect it could be made this year. It'll take another few months, but perhaps before the end of this year.
Okay, I've lived at the top of Church Lane for 39 years and 5 months. I'm concerned about, as Linda said, where are these people going to park? By which I mean the contractors. How are we going to deal with all the lorries that are coming up and down one of the major arteries into the village? You talk about it being a major artery, it really isn't wide enough for 2 cars to pass now, except in the widest bits. Where are they all going to go? We're going to have all this stuff coming in, coming out again. If 39 cars come out of that site first thing in the morning, there'll be queues all the way to the train lane.
So questions about traffic impact. But 2 questions, I think, about traffic impact during the construction phase, but also traffic impact once the development's been completed. I'll deal with them the other way around. Once it's been completed, the transport assessment looks at that. It'll look at the number of houses that are proposed, the likely, and bear in mind that a proportion of these are sheltered housing, so the usage, the car usage and the peak hour usage from that element of it is very different. But all of that gets modelled, as does the capacity of the junctions, and in the end, that transport assessment produces results and figures which show whether or not a junction is at capacity and whether or not it can cope with the additional traffic. Now, we haven't done it yet, it works to a degree, and in a way, a lot of these things are self-policing. Who knows how we're going to be all living and working over the next 5, 10, 20 years, particularly in light of what's happened in the last 6 months. A lot of people are working in very, very different ways, and those sorts of things will need to get factored in. So, that's all to be determined, and that's all to be addressed in that report, as is the impact during the construction phase. And one of the planning conditions that you'll see on every planning permission There'll be one on this site, which is all about construction management, and that's looking not just about how you work on site, but it's also about how you manage the arrival, the timings of vehicles coming in during that construction phase, and machines on site, and all that kind of stuff. So, and that's an environmental health issue. That's a matter which the council will be very interested in, and which they will, their enforcement team are right on that if people digress from the rules.
Is there any intention then, apropos of that, to widen Church Lane?
No, there is no plans. Again, as Simon said, all of this will come out when they do the relevant procedures and tests to come up with that assessment. But no, we have no plans to widen anything with all the properties that are down there. No.
No, I was thinking of also of the footpath going down, because we've got people coming from the development over there, Church Lane, plus those. How are they going to walk down Church Lane?
Well, if you look on the map, there is actually another footpath that comes out below there's another footpath that comes out below the far left house, which is a footpath that comes directly, so the pinch point is relieved, so you can walk round via the actual green space.
We will see.
Yeah, it is. It's on. I'm also on parking on. Like Simon said, if you look at what Autograph have got up there, there is a parking area, and they clock in and clock out, and it's designated for contractors, so they can all come in and not park on the roads and everything like that. Yes, I've been watching.
This is an indicative proposal. What's to stop any developer deciding they want to build more houses on the site? If these two planning applications go ahead that are seem to be offering at the moment, that's 78 new houses in the village, which is going to have a massive impact. And there are already 20 houses for sale in Wood, which don't seem to be moving. So I'm not quite sure why, even though we are told we need to build, but 78 new houses in this village would have a tremendous impact.
Yeah, you're obviously talking about the two schemes combined, and I think, as Peter said at the beginning, I can't say whether any of it will be approved. I certainly don't know whether they both will. To a degree, that's down to the local community. Well, I think ultimately, of course, if Mendip refuse an application, then an applicant or the developer has the right to appeal. But there's no doubt in my mind that the local authorities and councillors and planning inspectors give great weight to levels of local feeling and the like. And so, I would encourage everybody, whatever it is you want to say it, because if you don't, then nobody's going to listen. But to answer your question about the numbers, our planning application would be capped at 49. So if we were to want to put any more on there, we'd have to go back and make another planning application, and Andy and I would look pretty stupid having sat here and told you there's not going to be any more than 49. Now you might say, well, we don't mind looking stupid. Perhaps you say we look stupid anyway. But we're not interested. We're not in that business. My reputation, Andy's reputation, is to deliver and be honest and do what we say we want to do. It's what we've done up there. It's what we did on the farm, and we will do the same again. I've done lots of schemes like this in villages like Road, where I want to go back and do more and offer genuine community benefits. Rather than just 49 houses, this scheme delivers a whole lot of extras, which arguably wouldn't be available if it wasn't Andy. It wouldn't be available perhaps even if it wasn't me. And actually, if push comes to shove in front of an inspector, do we need to provide the extra 5 or 6 acres to the parish council? Probably not, but we're offering it, and it's there, and that's part of the package as far as we're concerned.
And Nicky, I'm coming. And that part of it is it's been a bit of a myth with regards to developers cannot, once it's glued, once it's in the 106, once it's in the application, they can't. And I'm the landowner. Simon does the planning and tries to get it right with me, but we're not the developer. But we have to do the 106. We have to do those agreements with the developer, and so again we pick, or we sort out the developer. So and we can choose. Now it comes down to going out to the market, etc., and getting the right one. But we have a great developer up here at the moment, which came by chance. But we don't just pick Beazer, or you've got to, for us. And again, as Simon touched on it, if I was going to do something like this and go to the Bahamas, you'd have half an argument to think that, yeah, but I've got to live here. I've got to live here, so I want to get it right. And hence, putting in the Browns ground. It's been there all the time with people walking on it, and in my opinion, I think it enhances the whole village to have that there, and it goes to the 106. It's in perpetuity. That's it. It's signed, sealed. That's it. And people can use it. I wouldn't want to be on the committee that administers it all, but the parish council would take that bull by the horns and lead to whatever wants to go into that.
There's a question there.
There's a lady here first.
As you have the extra land of Brown's land, and there's the question of stormwater, have you considered harvesting the water on the site from all the buildings and the runoff into tanks underground, within Brown's ground? And also, will you be developing integrated solar panels in the housing?
I'll start, Nikki. I'll start. Yes, it's a great point. There are ways in which we can, not Simon and I, but the developer can do exactly that. I wouldn't say we can't express what the developer will do or what will be made to do, but within Mendip, there already is a very high degree of green building procedures that they put in with the insulation and all that. Autograph are working very in depth with Eco, with Nick Spicer in the village, called Your Eco, and they are actually installing solar tiles on 2 of those houses now. What they've done though, the developer puts them out as a spec. So as a prospective buyer of that house, you have the opportunity as a buyer to then spec your house to A rated, B rated, and you can then choose to have that facility put into your house. And you might not want gas. Gas boilers have only got 2 years, I think. So people can spec what they would like within the house. At this stage, Simon and I can't say that it will be covered in ground source heat pumps, but we can certainly make an incentive into that, because part of our, I've got solar all over my roof. I think it was a really good idea. It's very expensive, but I think by the time I finish paying for it, it will pay off. The same opportunity will go to the people that actually want to buy the houses. They're already to a certain level of spec on greenery, on being green, but you can have extra. That's as far as we can say, I think, at the moment. Yes, Andrew.
Firstly, if I could just comment on Section 106's, before anybody is misled. Section 106 is a contract between parties, one of which is Mendip District Council. Section 106's can and do get changed. They are not cast in stone at the point at which planning permission is given. So I would invite the parish council to be very, very careful. Nothing less than the freehold transferring to the parish council at the point at which outline planning permission is granted, nothing less than that will do. Because otherwise changes will get made, it will be watered down, and we will not have this plan, we'll have something else. That brings me on to my question. It's an invitation really to Simon and Andrew. Is what assurances can you give us? You've talked a lot about the detail of a traffic plan, a detail of a flood plan, a detail of a sewage plan. These are crucial issues. They don't just talk to the nature of the development, they talk to the suitability of any development. And the danger is what happens is outline planning permission gets granted first, then the detail gets addressed, and when the detail can't fit, it has to be made to fit, because you don't ever go back on the outline planning permission. It's never revisited as to whether the concept is right for the village or not. So what assurances can you give us that these very important issues, and I just propose 3, there may be others, a traffic plan will properly be considered at the outline planning stage, a sewage development plan at the outline planning stage, and a stormwater plan that works. Because all of us, or a lot of us, will suffer consequences if it's just simply made to work at the detail stage when it's too late to reconsider whether this happens or not.
Okay, the second question first. I can very easily give you that categorical assurance that the transport assessment, the flood risk assessment, which deals with storm and foul, will be submitted with the outline application. So you'll have all that information. Absolutely, it's being recorded. There's no question. If it wasn't, in fact, I'm absolutely certain. If you look on the council's website, both of those are requirements to even validate a planning application. So it won't get anywhere without those. But and to deal with your first point about Section 106, yes, we have already said, and we understand the point about the freehold transfer. That's absolutely fine. I can tell you now, it won't be on the grant of planning permission. That would be insanity. So we get planning permission and give the land to the parish council. We need to find a developer. We can't do that. What it would do, there would be a trigger. Well, planning permission might be challenged. I'm not giving it straight away. So we need.
You've got to have a developer.
We need
You've got to have the developer on site.
There will be a trigger in there, and I've done this in another village down in mid-Devon, where land, in that case 7 acres, was transferred before occupation of the first house. So that's the way it works.
And right up until then it can be changed.
Section 106 agreements are not very, very rarely are they changed before 5 years are up from the date of grant.
I think what we should do is review the Section 106s that have gone in for the previous development of Church Farm and just assess against that what was originally said and what it now has become. The parish council meeting I sat on the other day was talking about changes, even at this late stage, for that development. There may be welcome changes, there may be neutral changes, but there are still changes. It can be changed right up until the point at which the freehold is transferred. And the parish council is not a party to that contract until it's transferred.
Well, the parish council can be a party to the Section 106 agreement, and they are in 2 cases I've got.
Okay, so that's an assurance. They will be a party to the Section 106.
That's up to the parish council and the local authority. I can't dictate that.
There's not Andrew, from my point of view, it's not a war of attrition, yeah. What I say is what I mean, yeah. And if Simon has to go, we have to go by the rules and the way we have to do these things. But if I say that that's going to be a piece of ground that's going to go to the village, we want to get the planning application through. We want to get what's in there, what we're proposing in. And we want to do the bit with regards to Brown's ground for perpetuity. He doesn't have to live here. I've got to live here, yeah. And you can change a 106, but you have to go back, and you have to go back to the council, and you have to get a complete what's it called what you have to do when you have to go back to the parish council, the mend it.
Well,
you have to.
If the if any change to the 106 amends the planning permission effectively and what was considered by the council in the first place, that it has to go all the way back through to committee, and then you'd have to fight your case. But the reality is, no developer does that within 5 years. There's rules that you can after 5 years. Then Section 106 agreements can be varied. But before that, but bearing in mind, all any of us want to do at this side at least, and once the developer's bought the site, then he wants to get on and develop it. He doesn't want to wait 5 years and then change the rules.
Can the nature of the houses in an outlining planning permission change? In other words, can bungalows become 3-storey houses?
Well, yes, you raised that. That was part of your first question, wasn't it? To what extent and the level of detail that falls within that outline application. In fact, I would argue that an outline application, and certainly the sort of outline application that we submit, is almost a full application. And that's become the norm in recent years. The only things that you won't see in our application are full details of the elevations of the housing. But that plan you've got is drawn on CAD. It's based on real houses, real house types, and is accurate. And so all of the drainage design will be based on real surface areas, real houses, and so it's pretty close to the full application. And it might.
Sorry, my question is not what detail do you choose to put in. What I'm asking is what detail is then constrained and defined by the planning granted. Because we've seen a substantial change up there between the outline planning permission that gave a principled agreement to the developer, and then at the detail stage, the plans change. The size of houses change, the orientations, the routes of paths. These things change between those two stages. And if bungalows change into 3-storey houses, it's an entirely different picture.
Well, Andy touched on the bungalow point. The bungalow point we can deal with in the 106 because we will specify their bungalows, and so they will stay as bungalows. The other points, yes, there's always a degree of flex between outline and reserve matters, but in my experience, and the plans that we've drawn up there, developers take them on, and they often use the same architects we've used, and they go straight through to detail. To some extent, the answer to your question isn't, you're asking the wrong person. You need to ask the parish council and the district council to put extra layers of control within the outline, and that can be done by way of parameter plans and by way of character assessments and character additional information that can be submitted with a planning application at outline stage, which then governs and narrows down the areas for movement later within that reserve matters application. So it can be done. Again, we've done that elsewhere, and there's no reason why it couldn't be done here.
Simon, the development, and especially the bungalows, what benefit will that give to the local community? In other words, will there be a priority for road residents?
Yeah, so the question was about bungalows and about benefits to the local residents of road, and I think behind the question is, do local people have any kind of priority over access to any of this housing? Well, they certainly have priority over the 30% that will be affordable housing, because in the 106 agreement, and it's in that one, there's this cascade mechanism whereby people who live in the village, in the parish, have first call on those houses. The bungalows themselves, I would expect to be of interest to local people, because we know that the needs survey has identified a local need for it. So yes is the answer.
Barbie.
Thank you. I am a councillor, but I hope you'll permit me to speak. I would like to say, as your district councillor, that I'm neither in favour of Murfield nor of this development. I stand here in order to represent your views at the district council. I have no, I live outside the village, I have no view on either of the developments myself. However, what I would like to say is, as Andy referred to, come 2025, no new houses are able to be connected to the gas grid. This is all part of dealing with the climate emergency. So I would sort of encourage all of you, in whatever responses you might make to either of the developments, to think about how you could make them sort of really exemplar if either of them happens. I'm not suggesting either of them. You might want to oppose them both. You might be successful in opposing them both. There is that possibility. However, if you decide, well, perhaps you would choose one development over another, perhaps you would choose one, then take this opportunity to encourage both Andy, the developer, whoever else is involved, Simon, to really grasp this opportunity to think about new models for the energy sources for the houses. You know, you could have integrated solar panels. It might be on spec, but things like air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, water source heat pumps, they're no longer as expensive as they used to be. We put solar panels on our house, 12 of them, they cost $5,000. You know, this is I don't know what Andy's cost, but the price of all these things is going down. You might have an opportunity at least to redeem something here, and I would just encourage you, in whatever responses you make, to think outside the normal parameters of what a housing development has to look like, and try to embrace the things that can go to mitigate the climate emergency that we're all facing.
Nothing's greener than a green field.
Nothing's greener than a green. No, absolutely. I reiterate, I am not in favour. I am not in favour of either of these. It is, you know, I stand outside road. My heart breaks every time more houses or buildings go up. However, if push comes to shove, and you either decide you will go for a development, or somehow or another, even against your wishes, a development happens, at least take the opportunity to make sure that these houses have the least impact on the planet.
But a developer is going to spend the least amount it possibly can to make their money. So
Well, I think, you know, there's an opportunity now that there are winds of change around these things. Some of these things are no longer expensive, and new houses will not be able to be joined up to the gas grid after 2025. Why would you want to do it now?
Could I just very quickly, if I could add to that, I mean, you're absolutely right, and I would endorse everything you said. But picking up the point the lady behind you said, a lot of this isn't optional anymore. The local authority, as we've just heard, has declared a climate emergency. We've got policy requiring a whole raft of additional environmental improvements and measures to improve the efficiency of homes, including the rainwater harvesting, which the lady mentioned over there. So all of these things are becoming the norm, and so we would expect to have to. So yes, there's a cost. In the end, Andy pays for that because it comes off the land value.
Okay, we'll take two more questions. I can see four questions, and then we'll hand over the microphone to Andy Pickett to make a statement.
Yeah, it says here about the use of Brown's ground that will be handed over for the community to decide how to use in perpetuity. Is the developer, is it their responsibility to develop that land, to landscape it? And when does that get done? Does that get done after the housing or at the same time?
Did everybody hear the question? Did everybody hear the question? No. Yeah. Okay. So the developer would, I don't know what he'd need to do the allotments, but they would plant the trees. Yeah. Where the trees would go would be down to the parish council. I wouldn't want to be responsible for that. And again, where the allotments would go would be down to where everybody or the parish council would consult, I presume, on where the best place to put them would be. There is a natural pond in the middle, so I presume that would be there. When would they be? It would be within When would it be designated they would do it? That's the...
Well, as I said earlier, it would, assuming we follow a model that we've done before, then that land would be transferred before occupation of the first house. And then the question of what goes on it is up. I mean, that's part of this consultation exercise. If actually we put allotments on there because we believe there to be a need, but if nobody wants allotments, then we'll take them off. So that,
it's done by the developer. They landscape that field and they do all that.
yeah, I mean, actually, there's not an awful lot to do. It's an open space. So there's not huge amounts of earth shifting or anything else. There's some tree planting and there's a bit of ploughing to make the allotments.
And water was, obviously allotments need water, so that we would get the planner that we would get the developer to definitely, he would plumb the water in and they would fence it, etc.
I'll just pick up that final point. As I said earlier, we may be submitting a planning application before the end of the year. The local plan inspector, the Part 2 plan inspector, is reopening the EIP in October. So there's no way we're trying to get this through before that's done. In fact, it's very likely that we'll wait and see what the outcome of that is. But this isn't about meeting any short-term need in Mendip. Mendip are just starting their local plan review. As I said, the whole process is reviewed every 5 years. We've got a new white paper which is increasing the housing requirements. I know it's a consultation document, but it looks to increase the overall requirement for Mendip by 150%. So there is a need. I don't think anybody can dispute that. There's a question about whether people want it near them, which happens all the time, and I have sympathy with that, of course. But there's a need in this district. There's a need in this village for people who are growing up trying to get on the housing ladder. There's some up there, I know that, but right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I suspect sales rates have dropped off. The question's about greenfield versus brownfield, and you're right, of course, there is a preference for developing brownfield sites wherever possible. The reality is, in the southern part of this country, there aren't enough, and they've been developed. Building houses in Sheffield doesn't help people in Mendip, and
Sandra, I think you have to listen to the answer before you step in. Is there anything more you want to say about that? Okay, I think there's a gentleman over here who is wanting to ask a question.
The reason I slightly skirted around the question of when we're going to submit a planning application is because we want to get that feedback, and it does matter to us. And so that's the answer to your question. It's not a foregone conclusion that we will submit a planning application. The chances are if we don't, somebody else will on some other piece of land. But it's not a foregone conclusion, and we do listen. You know, neither of us would be here if it didn't matter to us.
I think Dave Jupp wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, well, I think you've covered it. The traffic's the biggest one for me, and probably the drainage through the village. But I think you're bringing this to the end. So I'd just like to say, for those of you who weren't here in the last one with the James family common presentation, this was a presentation. We got a plan to look at. They've answered most of the questions. We might not have liked the answers, but last month we didn't have nothing like this. So thank you very much, you two guys.
And Andy, do you want to come and make a statement?
Thanks, Peter. I will just start by saying I'm somewhat embarrassed that my request that we get to make representations has somehow turned into I get to make a representation. That wasn't my intention. But hey, give me an elevated place and a microphone, I'll not shy away. I would like to address 3 points.
Just hold it a bit further away.
Is that okay?
Much better.
The first is this issue about Section 106s. They can and they do get changed. And before we make a decision, that we collectively, the village, Mendip, the parish council, the developers, the landowner, we have to make sure that what we think we're getting is what we get. Because otherwise promises are made and they're diluted. I'm told, I don't know firsthand, but I'm told there was certain Section 106 provisions for that development, such as trees to bund the new site for fabs. Where are they? They're not there. We don't get what is promised. It simply doesn't happen. For whatever reason, it doesn't happen. Maybe best endeavours, but the point is, the outcome has to be fundamental. It can't simply be a promise that doesn't come to fruition. And in case of Brown's Ground, it's a serious temptation. We all want Brown's Ground to stay as green space in the village for lots of reasons. And if we're tempted by this development that is the outcome, then we have to be certain that that's the outcome we get. And I'm not convinced based on what I've heard here today. And so I ask the parish council to be very careful in what they agree and what they leave to Mendip to agree. The second point I'd like to make, which hasn't come up tonight, but I have heard this mooted in parish council meetings and indeed was commented on in the link, and that is this presumption that infill is a better development than developing in the open countryside. This is a dated concept. It's no longer valid in law or planning policy, as my understanding. And for those of you who don't know, I did used to sit on the council and had statutory planning training to enable me to do that. The old concept of infill that says anything inside the curtain of the village is presumed developable, and anything that's outside was long since ditched because it gave rise to absurdities such as dilapidated stables in Monkley Lane were not able to be developed into offices to allow people to work from home, but open countryside within the village, like for example that field behind us, like for example Barbara's Ground,
is presumed developable. And that's clearly an absurdity. And so if we're going to have a joined up thought process to what development, if we have to have some, let's not make that decision based on dated concepts like infill is good. It's not. It is the open countryside. And Mendip's latest development plans, as well as the neighbourhood plan that we voted on and voted through, designated that land as open countryside. And it's now getting developed, apparently. The third point I'd like to make, very briefly, because I have already raised it in the questions, is the need to make sure that the issues that are maybe technical issues, maybe detail issues, but if they are issues that give rise to a problem in development, they must be dealt with at the point at which the concept of development is decided upon, which is the outline planning stage. And finally, to reiterate another point I've made, if Brown's ground is too high to develop, which was said right at the beginning of this meeting, then so is Barbara's. In fact, it's worse because it's high ground that's closer in proximity to residential houses, including my own. Thank you.
I have to say, and I'm not going to dwell on it, but yeah, and I probably don't. I don't want to get embroiled in it, to be fair. But Andrew, you need to get your facts straight, I'm afraid, because there are certain things with what we've done up there. And if you want to come and look at trees, by all means come. They're all there. Everything, absolutely everything that I had to do within a 106 agreement is done. So I regret that ability to come up here and say stuff, yeah, because you really need to get it right before you say things. And if you go on Facebook and you look at a lot of the stuff, I'll say it now, please come and see me, please come and ring me. But to broadcast it and assume you're getting things right is quite fundamentally wrong, and that's as far as I'll go.
Thank you.
Can I just say something about the sportsman development that development there has still not been taken over by the local authorities. It's still in private hands, and people can't sell their houses there because of that. Because so it didn't get finished. The development didn't get finished. Still to this day, it's been taken over by the local authorities for the maintenance of the road there. So that's got to be done. I know the company went bust, but it's not fair on the residents and the sportsmen. They can't sell their houses because it's not been taken over by the local authority. And we're talking a lot of years now, so you've got to get it right next time.
Okay, thank you. We've been going on for just over an hour and a half. I think it has been very informative. I think a lot of questions have been asked, and I certainly agree with what Dave Jupp says. We've had very full answers. You might not necessarily like them, but it's been a platform for an exchange of a lot of information. This is by no means the end of it. The parish council meetings are open to everyone. These issues will be discussed at the parish council. Currently we're doing those as Zoom meetings, so anybody who can access Zoom, which I appreciate isn't everybody. That's one of the reasons why we've got this meeting here in the playing field. But we may well return to the topic of Barbara's Field and hold a Zoom meeting at some point to discuss it further. I think I hope everyone would agree with me and thank both Andy and Simon for the way they've dealt with the questions and the information they've given us. And I'd like to thank everyone who's been asking the questions for the manner in which it's been done. I hope you agree it's been a very useful meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Andy.